Okay, so this time we're going to graph a sine wave. So, same format. A is still the number multiplied to the trig function, which is 1/2. B is still the number multiplied, or sorry, the coefficient of x, which is multiplied to x, which is 1. So, keeping it with the period formula, which is 2 pi over b, the period of one wave is going to be 2 pi in this graph. And to find out where the start and stop is, I'm going to set my parentheses, which is x minus pi over 3 equal to 0. And for the stop, x minus pi over 3 equal to 2 pi. So in this case, the start and stop, x will equal to pi over 3. And for this side, if I add pi over 3 to both sides, and you want to work on adding fractions by hand, we'll take 2 pi plus pi over 3. So the fraction form of 2 pi is 2 pi over 1. You can add fractions by using crisscross applesauce. So 2 pi times 3 is 6 pi, plus, because there's a plus in the middle, cross. Pi times 1 is pi. So we have crisscross over applesauce. 1 times 3 is 3. So that will give me 7 pi over 3. So we now know if we have 5 points in one period, the x value will start at pi over 3 and it will stop at 7 pi over 3. To find the x values between them, we're going to find the difference between the x values. So remember we did this in the last problem, and there is a formula because there's 4 equal spaces between the 5 points. So the difference between the x is going to be the stop minus the start over your 4 equal spaces. So common denominators, no need for crisscross applesauce on this one. We just subtract the numerator, keep the denominator the same. And that would give me 6 pi over 3, which is 2 pi. 2 pi over 4 would give me pi over 2. So for each one of these x values, I'm adding pi over 2 to get from one value to the next. Now, do you have to do it by hand the whole time? You don't. Just eliminate the pi. So meaning instead of adding pi over 3 plus pi over 2, you can add 1 over 3 plus 1 over 2 using your calculator. Make sure it's in fraction form. And you'll get, for the second x value, 5 pi over 6. So for 5 over 6, if you add 1 over 2 to that, you'll get 1 1/3. Make sure you change that into an improper fraction, and that will give you 4 pi over 3. Once you have 4 over 3, add 1/2 to that as well. And then you'll get another mixed number, so you'll set it as an improper fraction, giving you 11 pi over 6. And finally, if I add 1/2 to that again, I'll get the 7 pi over 3. So I have all of the x values. So with that, I can plug in the x values to get a y value. So to start off with, I'm going to replace the x with my first x value, which is pi over 3. So it's going to say, and I'm going to plug it in down here, 1/2 sine x, which is pi over 3, minus pi over 3. So this would give me the sine of 0. I'm going to drop down the 1/2, and I take the sine of 0, which is 0, and multiply it by 1/2, which would still give me 0. And then once I have that, I'm going to replace the next x value, which is 5 pi over 6. So 1/2 sine 5 pi over 6 minus pi over 3. You can either do the crisscross applesauce to subtract those fractions, or you can put in your calculator 5 over 6 minus 1 over 3, and you'll get pi over 2. So I'm going to drop this down, and sine of pi over 2 is going to be 1. 1 times 1/2 is going to give me 1/2. From here, keep plugging it in. It'll give you 0, negative 1/2, and then 0. So again, it's a wave that goes downwards and up. Don't have a lot of room here, so we'll try to make the best of this. Pi over 3, 5 pi over 6, pi over 3, 11 pi over 6, and 7 pi over 3. We have 1 half and negative 1 half. Starting at pi over 3, it's going to be 0, then up to 1 half, 0, negative 1 half, and finally 0. So from there, you see your wave. This is one period. And from there, it'll just repeat. It'll keep going upwards and downwards, upwards and downwards.